Hello, welcome back to the Geek Warning, the podcast that puts all the world's most interesting cycling tech into one place. This episode is not just about new tech. Thankfully, we're past the season of trade shows and endless group set reviews, so we have some things on our mind. We have a PSA to talk about. We also do have some new things. I'm Dave Rome, Senior Tech Editor for Escape Collective, and joining me today...
Suvi Loponen, Tech Reporter.
Hello, Suvi.
And I'm Ronan Mc Laughlin, Tech Editor at escapecollective.com.
Hello all. All right. Well, we've had a busy few weeks that we've discussed recently. Just in last episode, we were discussing how chaotic June was. To wrap up the month, we had Eurobike. Suvi, you were on the ground there with our other tech writer, US-based tech writer, Josh Weinberg. How was it? How was the week of Eurobike?
It was as nice as it always is. It was hectic. A lot of steps. I actually haven't added up all of my steps. People always talk about how many steps they've done at Eurobike because it's such a huge show.
Yes.
But yeah, as hectic as it was quieter than it was last year. And finally got the numbers over the weekend as well. So there were, I think, 20% less exhibitors this year.
Wow.
So down, well, in numbers, it's down from 1,800 to 1,500. So it doesn't sound that much, but it was clear there was a lot of kind of space filler going on this year and kind of smaller brands that I don't think would have been there if they wouldn't have got a good deal on a booth. So it was a little bit of a different show than it has been in previous years. But
yeah, I think for me, the one example I can, from afar, point to is that SRAM weren't there, from what I can tell. Is that right? They didn't have a booth?
yeah, SRAM didn't have, so Shimano still had theirs, but even with Shimano, it was kind of, they'd already launched everything. Well, GRX launched on the day of, the day before, basically, of Eurobike. So even the Shimano booth seemed a little bit kind of quieter than it has been in the previous years. And yes, SRAM didn't have any, but then there were loads of other, obviously, group set manufacturers there.
SRAM usually have it's not a booth, it's like a display that takes up like a quarter of one hall, which is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a huge one that they usually have. And yeah, none of that this year.
Interesting. Yeah, because Eurobike is very much like it's obviously a gigantic cycling trade show, and it's kind of it is the world's biggest cycling trade show, but it's also predominantly used as like a place for the local retailers of like German markets and nearby European markets to sort of come in and do their forward orders for the next season ahead and to get hands-on with the new product for the coming season. And for someone the size of SRAM to not be there is quite telling. I mean, they've clearly invested in reaching retailers in other means, but it is still quite interesting.
Yeah, especially when you consider that they just launched 2 or 4, depending on what way you look at it, new drop bar group sets.
Yes.
Was Campbag there, Suvi? Because they've also released a new group set of late.
Not that I saw. I at least didn't see a booth for them. There were Campag group sets, but I didn't see a booth for them.
They usually have something not the same size as SRAM, but a considerable stand, like the biggest of the normal sized, like a full corner on an aisle or something like that.
Were they there last year?
Pretty sure they were there last year, and they were definitely there the year before, which is the year they had launched the Super Record wireless 12-speed, the first wireless group set.
Yeah.
And Suvi, you're saying Shimano had a smaller booth than usual? Like normally they'd occupy like almost like a quarter of a hall. Was it?
It was. I would say it was still big. It was.
Okay.
I would argue it was the biggest booth still, and it's always at the same place where you enter this hall, which is the mainstream brands, because there's halls where there's brands that you've never heard of, but this is the hall where there's brands that you actually recognize. And Shimano's there at the entrance, and you can pretty much see their branding even from the other side of the place. So, yeah, they still had a big booth, but I felt like there was a lot of dealer action going on there because they've got their little meeting rooms where they go to and everything. So, but I feel kind of all the products that they had on show, it was nice to see them in real life, and that's the beauty of the show, that you get to touch and try out things. But I think it was just a little bit quieter than it has been, and just a little spaced.
Sounds it. It sounds it. Well, with that in mind, what stood out to you? Was there you've obviously been doing galleries on Escape and all sorts of coverage, but were there any particular items that you personally really liked and could see yourself using in the future?
I don't know if you really say me using them. Well, we talked about the kids' cargo bike, which was one of my personal favorites. Eurobike's full of
that was cool.
Some weird and bizarre things, and I think the kids' cargo bike was one of my favorites. Just there's a lot of products that are not on the market yet, and that one's one of them. So it's a little balanced cargo bike for kids, it's a prototype at the moment. So it's a Berlin-based, what's the company called? Super Bicycles. So they do adult-sized cargo bikes as well. And this one was just to try out at the show whether it would gain any interest.
Yeah, it's not a cargo bike that carries kids as cargo. It's a cargo bike for kids to carry cargo.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good clarification. Yeah.
Its size is kind of like you could fit it within the bucket of an adult cargo bike. So an adult cargo bike could carry the cargo of the kid's cargo bike, and the kid's cargo bike. Yeah, I ruined it. Let's move on.
But to be honest, I think if I had to pick one big item that I really liked, it would be the Giant Seek Junior bike.
Nice.
Yeah. Josh covered that in a standalone piece in detail, and I think that was probably one of the most spoken about products or launches, to be honest, because it did launch at Eurobike, and I think it's just really cool to see that a big brand like Giant is putting effort into developing something for the junior riders, because I think it's a neglected. I know as a smaller rider it's hard to find small bikes, but then when you go to the juniors who are wanting to start with cycling and racing and they can get a good spec bike that actually fits them, it's really good to see.
What was it? It's a sort of performance-leaning drop bar bike. Is it road or is it gravel? What sort of drop bar bike is it?
Road. Yeah, so it's got clearance for 37mm tires, but it's got 650B wheels, so smaller.
Yep.
And tire options obviously are a little bit of a limitation in that size.
Sure.
But it's a nice looking bike. And I think that's important as well, that you don't have to ride something that looks horrible. 130mm cranks as well, which is very cool to see. Yeah. I was like, I've never seen this before on a bike that is actually sold to consumers. So yeah. And the microshift shifting, I think there were two models. Some of them had this two different, at least two models. And there was the specifically for smaller hands kind of group set from Microshift as well on some of the Seeks. Yeah,
it's like a redone lever shape specifically for smaller hands. So something that I guess is new to the market and perhaps came to exist specifically from Giant ordering enough of them for them to justify putting them into production. But it does look cool. Like aluminium frame, weights under 8 kilograms, I think I saw for a complete bike. Not cheap, but if for those people that are sort of wanting their young teenagers or even younger, are complaining that bikes aren't nice enough for them, then I think this fills a gap there.
Well, I think the age they had listed as roughly translating to 6 to 12 years of age. So it's even younger again, yeah. But I mean, as cool as this is, I couldn't help but think when just every publication had a story, video, all sorts about this, is it an indication of what Eurobike now is, that the highlight of the show is a kids bike with electronic shifting, which, I mean, I definitely want one for my daughter, but I'm also thinking a kids bike with electronic shifting just seems not right.
Counterpoint. I worked in a shop where the owner had done first generation Di2 for his young son at the time. And then I remember, I'm just gonna humble brag. I remember having a chat with Gary Fisher, about this, and he'd done the same thing for his little one, where we basically came to the agreement that of any group that needs electric shifting the most, it's young kids, because they don't have the hand strength or the dexterity to operate a mechanical shifter. So
agreed. That's not my point though.
I know.
I mean, the point is more around it's a kid's bike that costs $3,300 or there's a $2,000 option also.
Yes.
But even that's not my point. The point is broader. A kid's bike was the the big highlight for most publications coming out of Eurobike, which...
Yeah.
What do you think it should be? Because I think a Eurobike is one of those places where there's a lot of emphasis on the cycling, not the performance side as well. There's the whole mobility. And I mean, this year there were loads of these mini cars and all sorts of strange things that I don't know, they don't have anything to do with cycling. But I think that's the side of, we don't obviously cover it much, but I think it's a huge part of cycling. And I don't know. I think getting kids into cycling is a huge part, a big part. And I think it deserves a story. And don't know, what is a big story from a trade show then? Like a 10 grand or like whatever, 15 grand Willier fancy gold adored bike.
I think this is kind of where we're seeing the decline though. I think the traditional trade show is on decline because I'm going to just say like maybe social media, the brands owning their own connection to the audience has caused, has given them the platform to basically launch these things without needing a trade show to get all the media into one place and to get, bring everyone into one spot. They can just sort of send the message out there. And I think the biggest stories we had leading up into Eurobike were done before Eurobike. Like we had, SRAM, we had Campagnolo, we had Shimano with multiple big releases. In the past, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, all of those brands probably would have kept some of those things for the launch of at Eurobike, and now they're just all racing each other to sort of launch it in their own time. And yeah, I guess this year we saw them all trying to fight for the weeks before Eurobike, where attention was still, not distracted, but they failed because everyone launched together, so the attention was distracted. But I don't know. What are your takes? Do you agree with that? Do you think I'm wrong? I don't know.
I do think I agree. And I think it is that the brands want their standalone spot, exactly like you said. And there's other avenues now that work better than trade shows. It's just, there's so much kind of chatter there. And your things get buried, even if it's a big group set launch. It just kind of does get buried in the number of stories that every publication writes from Eurobike, because there is so much smaller stuff to cover. And people get tired. So I think it's understandable from brands to want to do it before or after.
Yeah, it brings up a dilemma for us with covering these sorts of shows, because when there's only a small handful of like really interesting things and every outlet's covering it, it kind of makes you wonder like why we need to, in a way, or whether there's value in it. And it's certainly a question I've been trying to answer lately, or has been being asked of me from the powers above. It's like, what does our presence at these shows look like in the future? Is it? I don't have an answer to that. I'd be keen to hear from listeners whether what they want to see us cover at trade shows, or whether they think we don't even need to be there. I guess it's probably worth noting that like the big point for these trade shows is more arranging test product and finding out what's interesting, and planning the next 6 months of content ahead rather than what we actually end up covering in the moment. But
and when all the listeners tell us that they want to hear about the giant Seek, I will accept that I am wrong.
Okay, all right.
Again, I don't have an issue with this being covered or focus on kids' bikes or broadening our horizons beyond drop bar or cross country bikes, but I do still think that was really the only highlight to come out of the show. And first of all, it's like the second year in a row that Giant have launched a notable bike at the show, so that's interesting that they're still choosing Eurobike, I think. But I don't know, it's just I can't recall one other big thing coming out of the show other than a kids bike, which
smart play
on the one
from
hand,
Giant.
great,
as more and more big brands are not visible at Eurobike, it just gives more oxygen in the room to be a big brand. But
and if the bike industry is anything, you can almost bet that they will all follow Giant's lead and go, we're going to do that next year, and then swamp each other.
I don't know if they will. Honestly, like so many brands that I spoke with, they were a little bit hesitant about what's the future of the show and whether they'll come back. And I think quite a few had pulled out the last minute as well. So I don't know if Giant's going to convince them that this is the way to go.
There was also the two things we discussed on last week's show, like the Classified with the A2 integration and the new Continental tire. And the Classified, of those two, I think the Classified is probably the more, I don't want to say exciting, but there'll be less people with Classified systems, but that will be a genuine upgrade versus the race day only tires, which I'm not sure if a lot of people are going to start using those.
Still niche, eh? Like you're talking about a tire that I think was only made in a batch of 600 and an update that impacts a very, very small percentage of the market. So anyway, was there anything else, Suvi, that you wanted that was on your list that you...
Oh, I had one thing about the fact that there were more women than I think it's increasing at trade shows, which I always find positive to see, that I can actually spot a woman when I look around another woman, which is not the case at all trade shows.
And it's certainly not how it used to be. Yeah.
But there's still a lot of room for improvement on that front as well. I did talk with it was a PR person who's just joined a PR agency, and this was her first cycling show, and she was like shocked about the gender balance there. She was like, there's just all these guys, what's going on? And that's just how it is. But yeah, it's getting better. That's what I told her as well. This is improved from years ago. Anyway, so that was it.
It's improved. I also think Eurobike is probably an example of how bad the inequality is. It's I think it's probably the biggest way to highlight the inequality is attend Eurobike.
Yeah. I would say British cycling shows, they've been worse.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a core bike, I remember one year, I genuinely don't think there was, except for a couple of the exhibitors had female marketing people at their stands. I don't think there was one other female journalist in the whole building. And there's, I think, around 1,000 probably visitors there as well. So it's not great.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a little sausage fest, all of these. But also, one more thing to know on this year's Eurobike, what they had done differently is that they opened the booth. You could actually buy things at the show, which has not happened before. So Josh can tell about his tool purchases because he went a little wild at the Vera tool stand. He bought loads of tools, and it apparently
I'm disappointed he didn't ask for my opinion, but anyway.
Maybe he knew your opinion already. To be honest, I think that the things that he bought, maybe they're new. But anywho, it was an interesting development, and maybe it's going to be like more open for consumers, and then they're just going to be buying things, and it's going to become a trade show, as in selling things rather than whatever it is now.
Very cool. Okay. Sounds good. I think that's a positive change, and if it becomes more of a consumer show in future, then perhaps is a step forward for the traditional trade show that seems to be in decline otherwise. All right, Ronan. I believe Enve have a new road wheel, which may or may not be off the hook. What is this?
Yes, I think this is kind of big news actually, because Enve has officially unveiled the new SES 4.5 Pro, which we've seen Tadej Pogačar racing basically all season, and now it's officially unveiled. And as you might expect, there are claims of reduced weight. This is a sub 1,300 gram wheel set now with tape and valves. It's also said to be faster, all the usual sort of stuff you expect from a flagship wheel set launch. But sort of more subtly mentioned within it is the fact that this is now a hooked rim from Enve, which, with Enve being one of the pioneers of hookless road, I don't think any of us were really expecting the hook to come back. Yeah,
I mean, Zip gets a lot of heat for its stance on hookless road, but I'd say Enve did it first, or at least did it before Zip did it. So I mean that's the biggest news here is that Enve pioneer, almost a first mover in hookless road, in the being the first to do a wide 25 internal width road rim. This is pretty big news for them to move away from a hookless, or change from all in on hookless. But what are the reasons here?
Yeah, well, the reasons Enve tell us are not what you might think. So what they've done is there's now a mini hook on this new rim. It measures bang on the zero point 0.5 minimum width for a hook as laid out by ASO standards. So, I mean, if it was like 0.1 of a mil smaller, they couldn't call it a hook.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, and Enve have said that they didn't add the hook back in based on any safety concerns or tire retention concerns or any, having asked them directly, they denied that it was any sort of pressure from their pro team or public backlash to create a hooked rim that they decided to do it. They say instead that it just sort of happened by coincidence, because when they were developing the new wheel set and they took that hookless wide bead that you just mentioned there, and in an attempt to remove some weight from it, they kind of like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, scalloped out some of the material at the where the bead would sit on the rim, and what they happened to end up with was a mini hook that just so happened to be the 0.5 mil required under ISO standards.
Am I the only one in the room thinking that? Well, I am actually the only one in the room. So, but anyway, of the virtual room, thinking that we were once sold on Hookless as being the solution to lighter weight rims.
The very first thing I thought when I read all the press stuff here was, wait a minute, we've been told that one of the reasons for hookless is to reduce weight, and now we've been told that adding a hook into a hookless rim reduces the weight.
Oh, they're not adding a hook. They're taking away, they're milling away the hookless.
We should probably clarify that as well, because they're not like making it and then milling out this material post production.
It's all molded together.
I've said that in the article I wrote on escapecollective.com about these wheels that, it confused much, because I certainly was. And I've spoke to Enve. I've been over and back over the last 3-4 days, spent an hour on a call with them on Saturday morning, and then back and forth a couple of times since, just clarifying various different things. And
the clarification that you've been going through with Enve, it's probably worth at this point noting that this is actually the second time we're recording this segment of the podcast, because we recorded a few days ago where we discussed these wheels, and I guess we highlighted our confusion over compatibility, and Enve was saying one thing before, but it sounds like they've changed their stance on how they define these wheels, or what tires can and can't be used. So what have they clarified since then? What's the latest story on this?
Yeah, so this is actually quite important in that the new wheel set has a mini hook on it, but it's not a clincher type wheel. You can't go up and clinch your tire with a tube on this rim. Enve are still saying the new SES 4.5 Pro is for tubeless rated tires only. So first of all, it has to be a tubeless tire. So I had asked him, well, does that mean hookless only tires, or is that open to tubeless only tires? And they had told me that we should consider tubeless to mean hookless, and so all the usual pressure rating caveats of hookless apply to this new wheel.
That's 72.5 psi limit. Yep.
Yeah, for a 28 tire. And so that's what we discussed. That's what we wrote up. And each time I was writing it up, and each time I was discussing it, I was like, this doesn't make much sense, because they're also claiming that the pressure limit for the new wheel is 100 psi with the 28 mil tire,
which aligns with like a reserve and its mini hook rim.
Exactly. So back and forth. And Enve have sort of, I think, reluctantly finally clarified, well, actually, if you've got a tubeless certified tire, you can run that at whichever is lower of the two maximum pressures of either the tire, if it has a stated pressure limit on it. Well, it must have.
Yep.
Or the 100 psi of the rim.
Yep. And many modern tubeless road tires are now hookless compatible. And so they will have like they'll probably have a 72 psi max pressure printed onto the, or molded onto the side of the tire. But yeah, we're saying if in the event that they have multiple pressures listed, they might have a hooked pressure and a hookless pressure like Vittoria tires do.
Yeah, so the tires might have like TSS hookless
Yep.
pressure limit. The TSS is tubeless straight side. That's what we generally refer to as hookless. They may also have a TC, or tubeless crochet, or what we refer to as hook pressure limit.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does have both, the TC limit will be higher than the hookless limit, and so you can use that. Say, for example, it's 85. I don't know. I'm picking a number out of the sky. Then you could, with these new Enve wheels, you could inflate those tires to 85 psi. Even though the rims are rated for 100 psi, it's the lower limit of the two parts of the system that applies. So the tire has a lower limit there. You adhere to the limit of the tire.
Okay. I do think there's going to be plenty of market confusion in that. And I mean, it's in a sense, it's perhaps better than a true hookless system, but it's I don't think it's doing too much to save the confusion in introducing yet another stipulation.
It certainly doesn't. And I think reading between the lines, that was kind of why the Enve wanted to just stick to the hookless recommendations, because it would just, I think their intention was that, you know, we've people are finally adopting lower tire pressures and enjoying the benefits that come with that, rather than confuse the situation now and come out with a wheel that we say you can go to 100 psi if you've got the right tire. Yeah, they wanted to keep it simple, but unfortunately, I think the flip side of that is just, you know, a hookless anonymous brand bringing out a hooked rim and then trying to apply hookless limits would have just been even more confusing again.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Well, if we look at Enve's pre-existing range, it was hookless 25 internal width rims that the team was pretty much always using. You'd been sort of on this from day one of the issues, where you're basically pointing out that the 28 mil width falls afoul of current ETRTO standards with a rim that wide. The UCI then followed sort of your stamping up and down on this and implemented such a rule not that long ago, where it required teams that basically teams to follow ETRTO standards. So you could no longer run a 28 mil width tire on a 25 internal width rim. We've since seen UAE go to like these 30 mil archetype tires. How much of this rim is like an answer to letting the likes of UAE ride a 28 mil tire?
How much of all that is related, do you think? Is that the question? Did the archetype only exist because the team had to run 30 mil tires? Who knows?
That's a different question. We'll save that for another podcast. But yeah, how much for this wheel? Like how much? Because it's narrower, right? It's what, 23.5 between the beads?
So the inner rim width now at the hook where it's measured is 23.5 mil, and so if Team UAE, Emirates, or Team Total Energies even, or whoever else has Enve wheels and UCI events wants to run 28 mil tires on them, they can do. Legally, you know, without infringing on any UCI rules. Enve have said that, you know, this isn't the end of hookless. They haven't lost, you know, that they will still be developing hookless wheels, and the proof that this wasn't driven by any team demand for a hooked rim or whatever they say will be in the fact that the team will continue to use the existing SES 4.5 for flatter days and just faster stages. I mean, time will tell pretty soon whether or not that happens, but certainly now, where previously they would have had to use a 29 or in Conti's case a 30 mil tire on those SES 4.5s, they will going forward have the option of putting a 28 onto the new Pro rims.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. All right. Well, yeah, a new Enve that is no longer hookless, has a mini hook, but still needs to be treated as a tubeless only rim.
Yeah, you can run it with a tubeless tire with a tube inside it.
Yes.
You can put a tube inside a tubeless tire. You can't use a good old fashioned clincher tire. And one more thing on that, like I was kind of, I was keen to ask Enve, what is that hook doing? Does it help in any way with tire retention, or for riders who are maybe not all that keen on the idea of hookless? Is this now a new option? And according to Jake at Enve, in their testing, hookless tire blow off point might be somewhere between 140 and 160, whereas with the mini hook there, it bumps that up by like 5 psi, so it becomes like 145 to 165, which is just pressures that we're not seeing. He said that like at the pressures we're actually using 60 to 70 psi, it makes little to no difference.
All right, yeah. The big remaining question for me is like we've got rims on the market featuring mini hooks from the likes of Reserve and Aqua. I still reckon I'm saying that wrongly. Anyway, from Obeya's wheel brand.
There is no right way.
The name that can't be said. Yeah, so I think we've still got wheels coming from those brands with a very similar mini hook at least from a layman's point of view. And those wheels do claim to be compatible with both tubeless and clincher. And I think that's, for me, the confusing part here. And I can't help but wonder that Enve are just taking the safest stance possible here, where a tubeless tire is a much more known quantity these days. It has a bead that won't stretch, and that's what makes it a tubeless ready tire. And that by them just saying, use a tubeless tire, they're basically guaranteeing that there won't ever be any like shoddy fitment issues.
Yeah, like
which I'm fine with.
I'm fine with that as well. And actually, I mean, I think Enve are going to cop quite a bit of flack for bringing out a hooked rim. But I'm kind of of the opinion, and I've said in the article as well, is like kind of, hats off to them for doing it, because this won't have been an easy decision, regardless of whether it was 100% coincidental and they landed on it by trying to remove weight, or whether there was some arm twisting or whatever in the background. We'll never know for sure, but either way, the decision for the one of the pioneering brands of Hookless Road to sort of say, okay, we're doing a hooked rim, that won't have been easy. So yeah, fair play for doing that. But yet, having made that very, very difficult step, I think the confusion is then because the other small step, which would have been to say, oh, you can run any pressure you want now within the state limits, would have kind of undone all the hookless work of the past couple of years. And so they made the really difficult step, but the small step that actually people just wanted to hear, they couldn't then go and make that. But I mean, they have in the end up, they've told us that you can run hooked pressure limits. So, an interesting wheel set and interesting development. I think the people most delighted with this will probably be Enve retailers who, when they get asked in future, is that a hookless rim? They can say, no, this is a hooked rim, and probably sell that wheel set.
Yep, I'd say so. All right, well, yeah, one you can read more about on Escape. Ronan's done a write-up on this new wheel and what it all means that we've basically just spoken about. But in case you're confused, head on over there.
Actually, some more details on what the performance claims and stuff are, but because we didn't really talk about that.
Sure. Yeah,
they're supposed to be fast.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, we certainly expect to see them at the tour, and yep. Next on the list, Canyon have released their updated Grizl, which has been a bike that's been teased a little bit as that DT Swiss Canyon collaboration suspension fork came out recently, and obviously we now know what that was designed around. So yeah, Canyon Grizl. There's two versions. There's the OG, and there's a new one called the Grizl Escape. Again, where invoices in the mail for that one. Where do we want to go with this one? It's bigger tires, 700 by 54 mil clearance, still a carbon frame, but I think the handlebar on the Escape version is what everyone's going to be talking about. Suvi, how would you describe this handlebar?
It's a normal handlebar, and then they've just added an unnecessary extension to it. To be honest, it really looks like the Redshift kitchen sink handlebar. If people know that, it's basically refined copy of that.
Yeah. It's basically if you designed a handlebar to fit around an Etch-a-Sketch with its shape, and then have the hooks coming out from there. We're basically landing close to where Canyon have ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the purpose of it apparently is to just allow for more whatever hand positions, and you can mount your Aero extensions and everything on it. Mm-hmm. So it looks interesting.
Yep. Space for everything.
But I believe Alex has ridden it, and I chatted about it with him because there's loads of bags that I think there's similar bags to what Canyon introduced for the Grizl when they updated that one. So they've got this magnetic way of attaching to the frame, or in this case to the handlebar. And apparently they've developed a bag that goes inside this extension bit, so into the whatever shape that is, and attaches with magnets. And you can imagine how durable, how secure that attachment is if you're riding on gravel, because it does say this is for, made for the known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Yeah, don't know. This is confusing. But anyway.
The one known here is that magnets don't strike me as being strong enough.
No, I don't think. And I think, Alex said about it that bags did not stay on. Maybe just a simple Velcro would have done, but no.
A little too quick to release.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, complete bikes of this range, they're starting at $2,800 USD. For those that are looking through the range, the Escape is the one with the weird handlebar. Anything with the word Rift in it refers to the DT Swiss suspension fork. There's also a new lighting system that they have optional on 2 of the higher end models called the Eclipse, which looks kind of interesting. It's like lupine lights with built-in recharging. It reminds me a little bit of like Cannondale's Smart Sense system, but with like a dyno front hub, which I thought is kind of cool. Like they're probably the biggest brand that I've seen to go to this extent of integrated lighting.
It looks really neat.
Yeah.
And the dynamo, I covered it. There was the mass damper bike at Eurobike, and they actually had a very similar setup. Even the handlebar on that was a little bit similar shape to this Canyon Grizl. And the whole system with the dynamo, it's super small. You don't really even notice that it's a dynamo hub on the front wheel because it's so integrated. There's no wires anywhere. You can't tell it. So yeah, it's a very neat system.
Yeah, we're definitely getting to a point where those systems are becoming more integrated. Like both Hunt and DT Swiss are now selling wheel sets with it built in, with the hub ready to go. So yeah, I think them becoming more plug and play than they've ever been is not a bad thing. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. So
yeah, I was just about to say I'm not fully convinced about this. Just adding more wires inside the frame though and routing them just seems like a recipe for more maintenance. How do you do it when you can't access it?
But it goes through the headset, so it's out of sight, out of mind, Suvi.
Yeah.
I've just had an idea. Could you imagine if your lights were wireless and then you could take them off the bike and plug them in? There'd be a battery inside that would charge. You could use them, and then when the battery dies again, you could take it off the bike again without any wires involved and bring it to the wall plug and
a light bulb moment.
It's too far fetched.
Yeah, we're still in at the wired stage, Ronan. I think the trick would be getting wireless dynamo recharging.
Now you're talking. I mean, that was terrible because everybody who needs a dynamo for the types of event that I just did 2 weeks ago will be screaming at me saying, and there is good use case for a dynamo, especially on a bike like this.
Yeah. So anyway. If you need to ride far, then consider wires. If not, Ronan's novel idea of wireless lights might still be the better answer. All right, let's get on to something that's been on my mind, and I'm just going to put it out there because I need help with this. I have some silver hubs here that have arrived for review, and they're just hubs alone, and I need to build some wheels in order to test some hubs. But they're silver in color, and I should probably mention the brand. They're Project 321 out of Canada. So nice hubs designed for a gravel bike in terms of width. I'm going to have them on black rims, but I'm a little bit of a boring person. I always just have like black hubs, black spokes, black nipples, black rims. Silver hubs. What do I do with silver hubs? Do I build with silver spokes or black spokes? This is the conundrum occupying my mind right now.
Black spokes, because the rims are black.
Black spokes.
I think if your rims were silver as well, you'd have to build them with silver spokes as well.
Obviously.
Yeah, But with
But you're
black,
saying black spokes.
because then it blends nicely into the rim. Otherwise, it cuts.
But it doesn't blend into the hub.
No, but you don't see the hub when you're looking sideways. Usually, the hub's the least visible part. But you do see the spoke and you see the rim. The silver against black is quite, I don't know.
Interesting. Ronan?
In my opinion, you've already made the mistake and it's too late to fix it.
That I got silver hubs.
Yeah, because even with those new Enves we just discussed, they have a silver hub and then silver spokes and then black rims. And I don't know, I'm sure there's people who do like it, but it just doesn't work for me. Silver spokes on a deep black carbon rim.
No.
It always leaves me feeling like, oh, someone wanted silver hubs and they persevere with it despite the fact it just doesn't match.
Can you build them with the bird spokes? Just white?
No.
Or just go
I
around?
mean, I could. I won't, but I could.
And to clarify that, if you were building like an old set of 32 spoke, I don't know, Ambrosio rims or something, then it has to be silver spokes and silver hubs.
Yeah.
But with modern carbon rims, it is boring sometimes, but I do think it's hard to beat black spokes and black hubs that just match.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I already have a wheel set with silver hubs and black spokes in it, to be fully truthful on this. But yeah, this one, I was questioning. I hesitated given, I don't know. I don't know what the etiquette is on this anymore. I've lost my confidence in this matter. So
I'm looking at a lot of bikes and a lot of wheel sets here, and it's just all black spokes, all black hubs.
It is, yeah. I feel like it's been a long time since silver spokes had their day, and I've kind of come back. I've come around to like enjoying black spokes and black rims. Again, I'm so used to seeing it that like I don't know. I worry whether I can handle so much silver. Anyway.
We made the decision for you.
Just go purple or something.
Okay, so I'm going black spokes.
Well, yeah, or coloured. Well, what Ronan said, you should maybe just go rogue and just go maybe some different colours, a little rainbow.
If it was me, I would go and get a can of black spray paint.
And make the hubs black.
Yes.
Okay.
I just don't think there's any other colour that works. There will be nice options, and I joked about purple and that, and they're you know, I've seen stuff that just looks neat, but I always feel like it just doesn't match. Purple
and what
hub
about
is cool,
the rest of the bike?
I mean, yeah, it all depends on the rest of the bike as well, obviously. But even then, I still feel like it looks like a mismatch in the wheel. If you're matching the hubs to the rest of the bike and then the spokes and the rim don't match the hubs, it still leaves me feeling like it's a mismatch.
Yeah, black is just such a safe play, isn't it?
I mean, if your rims are purple and your spokes are purple, then maybe a purple hub. Or probably going by the logic I'm talking about here, yeah, definitely a purple hub. But if your rims are black, which you can't really choose otherwise, then I'm thinking you need to choose black spokes, which then leads you to needing a black hub.
No, you can have a silver hub, but you just have black spokes and black rim.
Nah, doesn't work for me.
Yeah. See, this is the conundrum, right? Like everyone you ask, you just get, I don't know. This is
Unfortunately, countless people will hear my opinion and tell me I'm wrong, whereas everybody else you ask and gives the same opinion will just be between you and them. So I look forward to being told.
This is the joys of why I brought it up on the podcast. I just wanted to entrap you into this. Very good. All right, now that I've done that, we can move on. So I'll let you know how I go with that one. But yeah, please in the comments let me know what I should do or whether I should just move on and do something better with my time.
Don't bother telling me how wrong I am. I've just turned off notifications.
Okay. Nice. Getting in there early.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a few episodes since we last had a PSA, so I thought we should have one. And this one is brought to you by most British-based cycling maintenance companies that have Instagram accounts.
Brought to you by or enforced upon us by.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to name names. I'm going to say Juice Lubes, Muck Off, PTs, World Tight, and True Tension are all equally guilty of this. So, as I said, British brands. Basically, whatever they show of how to use their products for maintenance, don't do it. That's the PSA. Yeah, I mean, where do I go from there?
Maybe tell us what you mean.
Okay, what do I mean? I just see a lot of these brands, and I think they might be trying to go for the algorithm play where they do something that like enrages people, and then they get comments, and then it gets tripped up and gets more views that way. I'm hoping that that's the case, but basically, a lot of these brands tend to post like reels of their products being overused. So they'll show like an aerosol degreaser where the degreaser is basically just like the entire can is being used to degrease a chain, and like it's just all the muck is dripping out of the chain. Or yeah, they'll show a chain loop being used, and it's excessive to say the least. And yeah, the common theme in all of these is people commenting, being like, won't someone please think of the disc brakes? So yeah, I think that's where I come at from it as well. It's like, yeah, a lot of these products are just very likely, in the way that they're being used in these videos, are more likely to cause more harm than good. I think, yeah, degreasing a chain with an entire can of aerosol degreaser with the cassette still on the bike is probably going to strip out a lot of grease and good stuff from your hub bearings, and also probably overspray onto the disc rotor. And so, yeah, anyway, I guess that's a PSA, is just don't take your maintenance advice from companies trying to sell you maintenance product.
Dave, I'm wondering though, if you used a full can of degreaser on the chain, on the cassette, on the bike, does then a full can of disc brake cleaner and a full tube of biogrease fix the harm that has been done? So
yes. So there's a ongoing joke that's been reoccurring in my DMs more and more, where some of these brands have created their own ecosystem of purchases. So if you use one,
solutions to problems they've created.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So if you use one, you then need to buy their 7 other products to rectify the problems you've just brought into your bike. And I unfortunately think it's increasingly true. I think if you use an aerosol, I think if you use an aerosol chain loop, you then need to use an aerosol disc brake cleaner to clean your disc brakes from the aerosol chain loop you just used. Or if you do use a aerosol degreaser to degrease your chain with everything still installed on the bike, you probably will need to buy their grease as well.
It is an approach that we see sort of gaining favor though, because we've seen these brands do it with bike stuff, and now we've seen politicians around the world take a similar approach where they fix problems that they've created and then take the credit for it.
Yep. So yeah. Anyway, at a very micro level, I think it goes back to the PSA, which is don't get your advice from Instagram reels and brands. Yeah.
I would say that it also goes, just take everything with a pinch of salt. Also, there's a lot on social media that isn't maintenance tips, not just from the brands.
Yep.
Not true.
So anyway, there you go. Got that one off my chest. I've been sharing a lot of these reels lately as examples of what not to do, and I figured it's probably time I turn it into a PSA. So there you have it. All right, well, before we wrap things up for this week, and before we get to Ask a Wrench with Brad Copeland, we do have one little quick tech bite. Ronan, I think this is something you've got your hands on. What is it?
It's Apidura's new frame and top tube bag, which they're calling Aero system. And long story short, they've set about developing bag and storage options that reduce aero drag rather than increase aero drag, has typically been the case. Yes, for me, very, very similar approach to the bike, approach that I took to the bike that I used for the circumnavigation, which we should by some point this week have an article up on escapecollective.com all about. But yeah, this bag, it kind of, like, Dave, you and I have always complained about frame bags and top tube bags rubbing your knees.
Yes.
I can't even fit one. Don't have that problem.
These are smaller than most, so it might actually work for you, Suvi. I'm not sure. Don't take my word on that measure, but it's definitely a much more rigid structure and fits sort of more securely and more integrated into the frame, which is what I like most about it. But Apidura are also claiming it saves an average of 5 watts at 35 kilometers per hour on pretty much any frame. It's an average of all the frames they tested. It was an average of 5 watts, they're saying. Yeah, if you remember a couple of years ago, they did that collaboration with Ridley on the Canzo Fast, where they had the bags that were specifically made for that bike. They sort of went away from that project and thought, well, how do we do that for any bike? And this is what they came up with.
I don't know why this popped in my head, but if the new Trek Madone is only faster because of its Aero bottles, does adding this bag make the new Trek Madone the same speed as the old Trek Madone? Does it negate the impact, the benefits of an Aero bottle?
Impossible to say, but I mean, theoretically,
I broke Ronan. I broke it. There's smoke coming out of him.
I told you, it's impossible to say. In theory, there's a lot of stuff going on here that should reduce drag. So yeah, it's the same. It's the same sort of conundrum I faced with that bike that I set up. That was like, yeah, this looks like it might work, but there's also plenty of holes I can pick in why it might not work. But let's just say Apidura have done it a little bit better than my own DIY attempts. There's no tape involved for starters.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, you'll have to strap them on and go for another lap of Island and see.
I mean, I've used these a couple of days. I would have used them for the circumnavigation, but they're just a little bit smaller than what you need for 10 days on the road. Well, a good bit smaller. But I mean, the frame bag is like, I'm probably already happy enough to say that it's going to be my go-to frame bag going forward, just because it does fit so securely. There's no knee rub issue. Like, the only way you rub your knees in this is if your knees already rub on your frame. But it's, to be as rigid as it is, it's just not as easy to get in and out of as other bags. The opening isn't as big on the frame bag, but then the top tube bag is like, there's no zip on it at all. It's just magnetic closure. And so it's like, it's really just for storing gels, and it's kind of like not big enough to store many gels. So yeah, no, you don't have to have them both. Well, I mean, so they both come with straps, but you can remove the straps from the top tube bag if you're using the frame bag, and they both mount on the same strap. And at first I thought the top tube bag had to be like, it's got a little loop on it, and most of the loops at the front on these top tube bags like have Velcro or open in some way that you can wrap it around the steer tube, and this one just doesn't open it. It never works, but this one just doesn't open at all. I was like, holy moly, you have to break the brake hoses to get this onto your frame. And then I realized, no, it that loop doesn't wrap around the steer tube, it just pushes against the back of it to give it a more secure fit.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. New options from Apidura. Sounds good. All right. Well, that's pretty much a wrap on this week's episode. It's just about time for Ask a Wrench, where Brad Copeland once again joins me to answer a number of questions from members. So, yeah, if you are a member of Escape Collective, and you're on the member-only feed of Escape Collective or Geek Warning, then you can keep listening and enjoy all that we have to talk about and all that we have to answer. If you're not a member, then this will be the end of the episode. But please, we'd like you to stick around. We'd like you to hear every episode and the full episodes that we do. So to do that, head to escapecollective.com/join. Become a member, support all that we do at Escape Collective, and in return, gain access to all that we do at Escape Collective. All right. In case you're wondering what we talk about, Brad Copeland and I discuss footwear for mechanics. Some basic advice there. We have a question about chasing a mystery creek from someone that has changed the bottom bracket, and the creek remains, as it always does. So we give some tips on how to pursue that in a modern integrated bike. Specifically, it's an Enve Frey. And we give some thoughts on some hitch racks. With all that said, if you're getting to this point, you're about to log off, please leave us a review. Tell others that you like Geek Warning, and please, on your podcast player of choice, leave a review if you can. Good reviews help us be discovered. And we'd like more cycling nerds to figure out that we exist. So please, if you can, leave that review and share it with a friend. All right, on with the show. We'll see you in Ask a Wrench. Brad Copeland, back again. We're almost making this a regular thing. What's going on?
Almost regular. Little lull in the season. I have some availability.
Very nice.
Sorting through the mess of the first half of the season to get ready for the second half, but I'm home, so makes scheduling easier.
Okay. When you say home, is that Washington or is that...
This is actually Pennsylvania now.
Pennsylvania. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my homes.
One of many. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, we've got a bunch of questions to get through. So, yeah, I mean, let's start from the top of the list.
Okay.
We've got one coming from Jared out of Bruvello in Sydney, a little repair focus shop. So let's hear the question.
I have a mechanic question, and my question is weird. It's about footwear. What footwear do you guys wear in the workshop, or what have you seen others wear? Is there a consensus in the industry? I have typically worn runners because they are comfortable, but they're not very durable. I'm currently trying out some Skechers because they seem to be more durable, but I found them to be not that comfortable either. So, what is the best shoe to wear in the workshop? I'd love to hear your responses, and thanks, guys. Keep up the great work.
All right, Brad. I'm sure you've spent many days of your career on your feet.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, footwear does matter and can make a huge difference to how comfortable and how consistent you can work. So, what are your thoughts on this? What do you recommend for a mechanic on their feet all day?
Get a stool. That's what I recommend. I love sitting on a rolly stool and just scooting around the shop on a stool.
Have you ever crashed your stool?
Oh God, constantly. Yeah. I have. You catch an edge on one of those wheels, and still though, I can't actually sympathize though with Jared's question. It's I remember being in my 20s, in my prime, working in the bike shop all day. We were at a shop. It's actually where I met Greg, my coworker / the owner of Precision Bicycle Services in DC, where my other home is located and where I work when I'm there. We met at a shop called Fresh Bikes in Arlington, Virginia. We were super busy all the time, it seemed like, but yeah, we were working long days, and I wasn't as committed to the stool life at that point. So I do remember having some like relatively persistent foot pain from standing out, just kind of on the arches of my feet, just sort of getting worn out all day, every day for, months on end. So I'll just jump right into an answer here. I have two approaches to an answer. One is like food for service industry workers, like people who, for example, work in kitchens, restaurants. Vans happens to make shoes in that space, which is both cool and trendy and sort of on brand for your bike shop mechanic look and aesthetic, but also more comfy, like padded inside and have, I think, like a softer rubber sole so they aren't as slippery. So if you work in a shop where you might have a hard floor, perhaps it's a little bit less slippery as well, and a little bit more cushiony inside. So you kind of just a little more comfy if you're standing up all the time and walking around all the time. So that's one possibility, something to consider. Another one, and this is something that Greg and I have become quite fond of lately, is looking through the distributor to see what brands they sell that also make a casual shoe that you can get for cheap at like a shop discount price. So if you work in a shop, which it sounds like Jared does, he might have access to a distributor which may have some shoes. And the one that we use, Quality Bicycle Products in the United States, it's kind of the ubiquitous kind of one that services the whole country and often runs sales. We got some Adidas like 510 brand shoes recently that are like kind of skate shoe looking shoes, or like for like a flat pedal type riding, but not certainly as stiff of a sole as like a cycling shoe. For like, God, I think they're like $20 or something. It was like a stunning price. Stunning price. So if they had, whenever they have our size, we're always kind of keeping an eye on that as well. So that's, it's a good quality shoe. They are supportive. They are for like, somewhat for like active type use, like skating or BMX, type bike riding or something with a flat pedal. So they're not like flimsy little, cheap sneakers, but they're quite comfy and kind of supportive as well. So that's an option if you have access. If there's any industry folks out there who are listening and have access, that's a little hot tip that we've recently found for ourselves. I
probably should mention that $20 for a 510 is not normal industry pricing. That would be a true.
It was like blowout price. Yeah. It was. It sure was. I think they maybe were discontinuing the brand or something like that, but it was definitely like the nicest thing they had, and the prices were crazy. But they always have shoes on clearance prices if there's a new style or an update or something like that. So that's something you might look into. A nice element of such a shoe, like a flat pedal shoe, is they often have like reinforced toes. So you get a little bit of toe protection in case. Yeah, especially for like skating, because you kind of use your toes. I always complain, and I want to wear nice shoes. Like my nice shoes, I never really wear into the shop because I always drip like oil on them immediately, or if I'm bleeding a break and something dribbles down and drips
Tire
onto my
sealant.
shoe. Yeah, exactly. And then it never comes out. There's always some stains. So I would hesitate to say go buy some nice running shoes, although they might be the most kind of performance, oriented choice. I would feel bad telling you to go buy some nice new, fresh ones, and then first day. Make them, smudge them or scuff them up. So I'm always looking to find some value and not have to waste a bunch of money on stuff if I can. So
yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's a few different schools of thought for footwear of this for being on your feet all day, and I think you can either go like the heavy work boot side of things, where you like basically have a stiff sole that is gonna give you a lot of support to the foot. And ideally match that with like an inner sole that is actually like ergonomic for your needs. Or the other option is to go, like the lightweight sort of like springy, well padded sort of runner style, or like skate shoe as Brad sort of talks about. But I think the common theme in them is like making sure that they're not like flimsy and unsupportive inside. Like you want some kind of level of footbed that actually supports the foot and doesn't just let you like fold over in a heap as your foot fatigues. So, like the old Dunlop volleys, I know a lot of mechanics in Australia used to use them because they're cheap, and I actually think that's a really terrible shoe because it's like very thinly padded, very thin sole, no support. So, I think that's why like people rave about using like running shoes, is that they actually are quite supportive and have like a shape that matches the foot, and I think that's sort of the thing to look out for. And I think you could probably with like a cheap orthotic or something like that, or a cheap insole, you can make most shoes significantly better. What do you think about flooring?
I like a padded floor, with one exception. It does sometimes keep my stool from rolling as well, unfortunately. But for dropping things on it, as well as being yourself standing on it all day long, it does make a huge difference. Actually, it's a little thing that goes a long way. So, if you have it, or you can like kind of pad around your work stand, kind of just underneath it, around the bench where you would be most likely to drop things on the floor, and where you're most likely to be standing most of the time. That's kind of a good place to start. Or you could do like I've seen it done with like gym flooring, for like home gyms. You can kind of get sort of pre-made, pre-sized, almost like a puzzle piece type of fit that you can make a padded floor of however big you want it to be, essentially. So that's another good option, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's just like dense foam.
Yeah, you just want to make sure it's good quality, where the gaps aren't forming between the puzzle pieces. Because I worked in a shop where there were like gaps, and occasionally you'd pull up the entire floor looking for like a ball bearing or something like that. It was just
I was gonna say, but it was fun to like pull it all up once in a while to like see, and then you'd find all sorts of it's almost like Easter.
But you'd then realize that like it wasn't sealed at all.
Exactly.
So good flooring I think matters a whole lot. Like if you're just working on a concrete floor, I think that's probably actually where I'd first start, is trying to pad the floor, and then supportive shoes I think is the main thing. Go try on some, and figure out just as you would any shoe, figure out something that's comfy, but just avoid something that's like perfectly flat on the inner sole. All right, Brad, we've got a question about a clicking noise and how to pursue that. Let's hear the question.
Hey, Geek Warning, folks. I've got a question about my Enve Fray. I've been riding it quite a bit. I've replaced a bunch of parts on it, built it myself, all that kind of stuff. So got a clicking sound when I'm riding along. It's in the big ring, it's in the small ring. I don't think it's happening when I'm standing up, but there's a different clicking sound when I stand up. I've replaced the bottom bracket, taken out and re-greased everything as far as the drivetrain goes, and I have pretty freshly waxed chain that I rotate out between a few different chains. It started a couple weeks ago, and I don't really know why, and just curious how you would go about tracking down where a clicking noise is coming from and what you would try or suggest. I know that any kind of bike noise is going to be sort of a matter of asking a bunch of questions and whittling down where it could be, but I'm a little bit at a loss, and it's just a little frustrating. So thanks.
All right, so a nice Enve Fray that this mysterious person has built themselves And then yeah, they've basically been trying to chase a click in the bike. It sounds like it's not happening when they're standing up, predominantly really when they're seated. Of course, they've replaced the bottom bracket, and of course, it's as usual not the bottom bracket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do as far as when a bike comes into the shop, a customer says there's a noise? How do you go about finding a noise?
Yeah, so it's all about kind of isolating your variables to the extent that you're able to. In a shop, you have a lot of resources. You might have two wheel sets, interchangeable wheel sets where you could swap one and then determine if it's anything to do with the wheel by swapping a wheel set out for the one that's on the bike. You may also do the same thing with pedals. You may just take the pedals off and realize they were super loose, and maybe it is the pedal in the crank, especially if it's a kind of a pedaling induced creak. But it's kind of like to the extent you can, like you did try our mystery question. We don't have a name associated with this one, so noticing whether it's happening in seated or standing or both, big ring or small ring or both, a certain gear or combination always helps. If you have some idea of the history of the bike and service, whether it's you've had parts replaced or some things have been apart and gone back together, whether it's from traveling or putting it in your car, kind of identifying what may have changed since it was not creaking that could have been the responsible moment in your life that led to that creak developing in the first place. So that's basically it. The fact that, it's funny because it says there's a different creak when he does stand up, but in any case, things I would look at, the bottom bracket is the sort of scapegoat of the industry. It has been decades since the bottom bracket was the likely source of a creak on any bike, really. But in any case, at least a decade. If you overlook the PF 30 days where there's some variability there, I would say it's even maybe longer than. Yeah, it's been a long time. So in any case, what I find is very common these days, though, and we've touched on this in past episodes, a seat post in the frame, especially when there's an expanding wedge type of a fixture to be the seat post binder, which there is on this bike. We got confirmation of success in a past question, in fact, where that was the source of a creak. So in the case of this bike, what I would probably do first is I would make sure the pedals were tight, first of all, just first and foremostly. But I would then pull the seat post out, pull the wedge out, clean the entire inside of the seat tube out, and I would make sure all the contacting surfaces of the wedge, other than what touches the seat post, are greased. So basically the little pocket that it sits in the frame is a nice greasy surface. So there's definitely going to be some shift under your weight. And that just keeps the shift from being like a sticky two surfaces creaking against one another to two surfaces sliding nicely on some grease, because it's going to kind of shift around under your weight either way. And then I like to have a bit of carbon paste only where the seat post is kind of like at the very top of the seat tube of the frame, basically where the seat post is held, just between the wedge, like where the surface is being pushed in from the wedge and kind of pushed against the seat tube, in between the seat post and the seat tube of the frame there. Nothing below it, because I find sometimes excess carbon paste down the seat tube where the post is just kind of freely able to move a little bit under frame flex. It is not being held in place by the fixture that holds the seat post. Sometimes having extra carbon paste there can actually make a creak sound worse or cause a creak to happen as the frame and seat post kind of shift against one another. I find that mostly in Aero shape seat posts these days. I would say that's like the most predominant time when or type of bike that I see this on. But even on like less Aero, but kind of like these D-shaped posts, a lot of the bikes have now that aren't like true Aero profile posts, but are somewhat Aero. And often are held in place by an expanding wedge. Those are the particular moments when I find the seat post to be a likely culprit for creaky bikes, especially if you're only hearing the sound when seated. And that's when the weight is kind of causing the post to shift around. That binder is like a fulcrum point that the seat post pivots on, and like the bottom tail of the seat post is inside the frame kind of shifting around. And that's oftentimes where a little bit of frame flex or effort on the pedals can cause two surfaces to rub against one another and click or creak and make kind of a frequent sound that I'm sure is aggravating after a few hours.
Yeah, I've also had it where that same seat post shape, if it's too long, it can kind of Yeah, like that
exactly.
excess length can also be a problem. Like, you know, maybe it's contacting like a bottle cage riv nut or something like that. Or it's just
sure.
Yeah, I've had it where shortening that seat post has also helped.
Yeah, that's something I used to talk about in the past too on this podcast. Was how I like to see not just fork steers cut, but seat posts cut to as short as they need to be. You know, I think that's sort of an overlooked area where it causes creaks. In some cases, it's a free bit of weight savings, not a ton, but a little bit. But yeah, oftentimes the seat post, especially on a carbon bike these days, eventually as you get somewhere down the seat tube, the shape changes a bit. It might flare out a little bit and might open up a little bit. And that like tolerance for the seat post shape only extends so far down into the frame. And then if you have a little bit of a, let's say, looser fit and a lot of seat post in there, you can get a little bit of that kind of wiggle room, shall we say. And that can be a creaky source.
Cool.
So that's something to look at. We don't know much about the spec of this bike. I seen recently a lot of Shimano road cranks. The chainring bolts tend to come loose on their own. And when I take cranks off at the shop, I find them loose more often, I think, than I don't, it seems like. And they're not really Loctited from factory, so they are able to probably work their way loose a little bit over time. But that's one where you can get some kind of creaks from the surfaces of the spider tab and the chainring rubbing against one another just a little bit and having just enough of a loose fit to creak there.
Yeah.
But yes, there's creaks come from a lot of places. So the best thing you can do is really like figure out what causes it, what circumstances are causing it or make it worse or make it go away, whether that's standing, sitting, leaning the bike, certain gears, certain chain rings versus other ones, and kind of narrowing down where it occurs and when and under what circumstances. And that usually helps to pinpoint the problem.
Yeah, I agree that it probably is the seat post, but I would say that if a bike comes my way with a complaint of a noise, and Brad, you probably have similar tricks. I think all mechanics have similar tricks, but there are ways to manipulate creaks out of bikes in a stationary mode. And this is probably giving away some of the pro magic, but yeah, I mean, basically it would my process is to apply quite a lot of flex on the handlebar to isolate whether there's anything happening in the headset handlebar junction. You can kind of twist the saddle and sort of pull up and down on the saddle as well to see if there's anything obvious happening from the saddle side of things. And then I'd probably also end up pushing the wheels from the tire side to side, trying to rock them to feel for play or movement. And then you can also, if it is the bottom bracket, you can often get that to creak by really loading up the pedal from one side to the next, and any movement there will normally display itself without having to ride the bike. So yeah, I mean I guess this all comes from experience, but there are ways to sort of get a bike to cry for you if you need to.
Yes, exactly. And when you're in the shop, there's a lot of kind of additional resources that make it pretty straightforward, and you can swap, like I said, swap some parts in and out to really isolate where things may or may not be creaking from. But you're right too, Dave, that it's not uncommon, and I've seen it a lot of times where the bottom bracket is yet again the blamed party, and it's actually something in the cockpit, the handlebar or stem, where you're kind of pulling on it as you're seated and pulling against it while you're under some effort. Yes, and it seems like you're pedaling hard, so it must be from the pedaling action, but in fact it's kind of from tugging on the bars. So there's a lot of sources, and the best thing you can do if you can isolate it is, like Dave said, off the bike. If you can still reproduce it, that definitely can go a long way in terms of narrowing down the probable sources from where it could be creaking. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's good in general too, I would say, is some little PSA time to pull your post out and clean out that seat post interface anyway, even if it is assembled the way that I described earlier with grease on the correct surfaces and grip paste in the right places. But a seat post is, and especially a non-round seat post, the seat post interface is a very prime location for water to enter a frame, and with it carry some small gritty particles. So that's also a frequent source of creaks, is just from that happening to your frame over time, and cleaning it out is oftentimes the best way to fix it or keep it from happening in the first place as a preventive thing. So every so often, good to pull that out, especially if you've ridden in the rain a bit.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hope you find the noise. Let us know if we were right and it is in fact the seat post. Lucky last question for the week. We've got a question about hitch racks. A little bit outside of the norm, but But Brad, I think you've probably used a bike rack or two in your days. So let's hear the question.
Hi, geeks. Just a question about hitch racks. Is the answer to my question the one-up rack, or are there cheaper options worth considering? I don't like the idea of roof racks. The paranoia kills me. I can't fold down my seats like I used to because there's 2 child seats in there now permanently, and the faff of doing those up and off kills me. And any tips for trying to get the cost past the misses? I've talked about the lifetime warranty, the replaceability of parts, the fact that you can extend up to 4 bike racks when the 2 munchkins need their bikes on there as well. Any advice is appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, Brad, car racks, carrying bikes. What's your experience here? What's your personal preference for a way to carry bikes with a car?
Yeah, I've had every kind of rack imaginable at this point in my life, and I am a hitch rack, personally a hitch rack devotee now, and I have one on a little Honda Fit. I have one for the big specialized race van.
Yep.
And I've been in the presence of bikes that have been run into people's garages on their roof rack, and that is enough to scare me a little bit. I've never done it myself. I've come very close and then caught myself before doing it. But I'll say that it's one of those things that no matter how mindful you think you are, there's always a risk, and you may catch yourself out one time, and that's one time too many. So in that sense, it's much cheaper than a hitch rack, or rather a hitch rack is much cheaper than a roof rack when you factor in the eventual damage you'll do to your car and possibly your house by running into it, not to mention your bikes. So I'm a big fan of hitch racks. One Up does make nice ones. They are, I think, at least in the States, they're a direct to consumer brand now. Like they're not sold through shops. I may be wrong about this. That was something Greg and I were discussing, and he seemed to think that was the case. Maybe you know, Dave, but
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not a common brand in Australia, so a little out of pace on that one.
Okay, yeah, the ones that, so I currently have a Thule rack on my little Honda, which is like for a small car. It's a 2-bike rack, but it's one that allows you to kind of keep the wheels attached and the bike's, upright on the rack. And it just sort of has a wheel, like a little arm over the front wheel that holds it stable on the rack, So very easy, very fast, folds up. It's very compact. So I've been super pleased with it. I must have had it for, 8 years now, or at least. Yep. I mean, it's just, and it works just as good as ever. So not very expensive. I think it was like probably under $300 for the whole thing. If your car already has a hitch on it, then good. And if not, you can get one put on at like a U-Haul, for example, for like pretty inexpensively, much cheaper than if you went to like a specialty kind of like truck, service place that would install like a higher end one. But since if you're only carrying bikes, the weight's not much, so you don't really need like a super deluxe hitch itself to like you would tow a boat with, because you're just not putting that much weight on it. Hopefully,
that's the hidden cost here. Is that some, especially if your car's still under warranty, you can void the warranty by getting an aftermarket hitch installed, and if your car's new and within warranty, you actually need to get the original hitch mount, and they won't install it in a lot of newer cars. They won't install it without also installing like an oil cooler on the assumption that you're going to be dragging a boat or a caravan, and that's actually where like a lot of the hidden costs are with hitch mount racks. Is like if you have a newer car, it can be very, very expensive to get the hitch installed. If it's an older car outside of warranty, then go ahead and do exactly what Brad said. Get an aftermarket hitch installed by like a third party, and they're quite affordable.
And that's what I kind of suggest to most customers who don't already have a hitch on their car. But yeah, otherwise I would say Kuat is do you have that brand in Australia?
Yes.
That's like the deluxe kind of one of the premium kind of rack brands out there. They're so nice, and they're like beautiful looking too, which is somewhat important depending on, your tastes. But they're very high quality. They have features where they can like integrate into your like the brake lights of your own vehicle and like illuminate a brake light on the rack. So, if your car is sort of obscured by bikes, you can still have functionality there too, which is kind of a neat thing. I'm sure other brands do it too. Those are just the ones that kind of like
does as well.
I
think most of them do now, because it's in some countries it's legally required to do that. So
that's good. Yeah, it makes sense. And the cool out ones are, at least the higher end ones, often have like some aluminum elements to them as well. So it's like a weight reduction, and it's pretty significant. And you do feel the weight, especially if you have like a 4-bike rack on the back of a car.
Yeah.
They are quite heavy, and
Leveraged weight.
Yeah, it's leveraged weight hanging off the back of the car, and you can kind of feel that. So especially with like 4 mountain bikes on the back of a long extension, it's a lot back there. So the lighter you can make it, the better. May to some extent help your gas mileage, but I'm sure it's relatively negligible. Certainly would be better than putting 2 bikes up top and having a huge windscreen up there, or big source of drag. So they are more efficient. They are quieter. I had a roof rack and it was quite loud. I would say too, you heard the wind noise, so that's one thing to think about. But I would say, hitch rack and spend the money, spend it once, and get a good quality one, and it'll last. Like I said, mine's going strong at 8 or 9 years old. With no signs of anything to worry about wear or fatigue wise. So just maybe to explain to your wife, to address that part of the question, just break it down in costs over time. So it's like, but for a year it only cost me $30, for the next decade. So it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, they do last, and I'd say as long as you stick with any reputable brand, they're all kind of built to last, and all the reputable brands will offer you support through spare parts, I believe. I think your Q8 is one. One Up would be another. Rocky Mounts is one I've had good experience with.
Yeah, we use them in our team van. The fork mounts on the wall. Yeah, they're nice. Yeah,
and they tend to be decent value. Yakima is probably on the cheaper side of things, but I've also had pretty good experience with them. And then there's of course Thule, who are kind of like the market leader, and have a pretty generous warranty. So I think that's 5 brands. I think between those you probably can't go wrong.
Yeah, and also it's important to remember that hitches are a pretty standard fit, or at least one of 2 sizes. And so if you get another car, you can just transfer it and keep it. So you're not like locked in. And sometimes with a roof rack, for example, we have to buy certain, width bars up top, or, different fittings for your car. And then if you get a new car, it may not fit on without having to buy more stuff. So that's another feather in the cap of the hitch rack option. So anyway, I say go for it and justify it however you need to, but it's certainly worth it.
Yeah. One other thought is you mentioned that there's a growing family that might not be ready for bigger size bikes yet, but I think look for racks. There's quite a few. I'm pretty sure like every brand I just mentioned does this, where you can start with like a 2-bike rack and they all offer add-on, and you can add like a 3rd bike or a 4th bike adapters. So look for rack models that have that capability. You might want to start with like a 3-bike rack where that has a 1 add-on, if you know you'll eventually be carrying 4 bikes. But certainly factor that into your buying decision. Like look for the models that actually allow the add-on accessories, and then obviously price up how much those add-ons cost. Because the price can get up there if you're buying multiple accessories for these racks. But there can be a big price difference between some of these brands. All right, Brad, that's the last question for this week. Thanks for joining us.
We got a little off the main line with a few of the questions this week. That was interesting. Some new things to think about.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right, well, if you're listening and you want to ask a question to Brad or myself or both, head to escapecollective.com/hello. Please introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and ask your question. Try to keep it brief. About a minute and a half is the perfect length for a question. All right, until next week. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.